the gun.
Raymond, that's you.
No, this ain't Raymond.
I'm Raymond. You're watching RPadTV. And once again, Mark Zuckerberg is trying to screw me on Facebook Live here. So now I have to manually do this stupid thing.
Technical difficulties.
It's like Han Solo always said, it's not my fault.
Yeah.
All right. Now we are live on Facebook as well. I'm Raymond. You're watching RPadTV. And today we're going to talk about what video game journalism means in 2025. I have no idea. So I enlisted two people that are much smarter than I am. They have decades of experience in the video game industry, both in game journalism, in game production, game publishing, marketing, PR, community management. These guys have done it all. On the top left is Ray Carsillo. What is up, Ray?
Not much, Ray. How's it going? That's not going to get confusing at all for people.
Yes. Well, yeah, let's clear it up. He will be Ray and I will be Raymond for the sake of this conversation. And on the top right is Chris Kramer, who I have not talked to in a long time, but I'm so happy to be talking to him now. What's up, Kramer?
Good to see you, Ray. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. Thank you for calling me Kramer.
Yes. And question about that. On your social handles, there's always an apostrophe, so do I have to go Kramer?
Yeah, you do. The exclamation mark. Because that's the way I hear my name, because it's always like Kramer. All right, what? So that's usually the way my name is invoked.
I like it. I like it. So I kind of want to work backwards from when I first met you guys and kind of move forward to where we are now in the game journalism landscape. So Ray, when I first met you, you were at EGM.
Yes.
And I think that was like kind of the end of the days of when print was still king. I think at that point it was just you and Game Informer were still around.
Pretty much. I think Game Pro and Game Fan were still trying to make last second, maybe last ditch comebacks or efforts. There was conflict about that, but yeah, I think when I started at EGM in 2011, even though I had been started in games journalism in 2008, but when I got to EGM in 2011, yeah, it was just us and Game Informer. I think that were still the regularly printing print magazines at that point, and then about 5 years later, it was just Game Informer, and about 5 years after that, it was nobody. So
hey, don't count out PC Gamer yet. They're going strong.
Oh, are they? I didn't know that.
Oh,
that's awesome. So, Ray, what is the biggest change you've seen in games journalism from when you started until now?
I mean, I think the biggest change. Oh God, there's so many. I mean, in terms of content, a huge emphasis on guides. A lot less of push for news, a lot less push for reviews. The big traffic driver, it still seems, is guides. Players who need help getting achievements or trophies, or just looking to 100% something, or just struggling in general. That seems, even when I was just freelancing. I just got a new full-time gig, but before that, I was freelancing. The big demand was, can you write a guide for game X? Right? They didn't care that I had done 550 plus reviews. I didn't care about the preview experience. They wanted guides. So I feel like that definitely has been the big change. Whereas 15 years ago, obviously, reviews were coveted. News was your daily traffic driver, right? So, I mean, I guess in that aspect, I think for me, that's probably the biggest thing just from a content standpoint, I think. So.
Now, Kramer, you and I go back even longer, and I think when we first met, you were at Imagine. Is that right? Or
yeah, possibly. That was 1998, 1998 through 99, I believe. Yeah,
I was 12 years old then.
Yeah, of course. I myself was but a youth.
So you've seen a lot. When we first met, you're still in print. I was in online, and you might as well have been in a much higher caste system than I was in. So what's the biggest change you've seen over the course of your career?
Well, so it's 30 plus years for me now. So I started my career in 1993, like fresh out of college. Just got really lucky, scored an awesome gig with Capcom that I went back to later.
Right.
But, on what I've seen in that time is I saw online kill print media, and then I watched online media kill itself.
What do you mean by that?
Well, I mean exactly what Ray was saying. What Ray was saying was all the push now is all on things like guides and things like that, because that's all SEO. So what's happened is the media murdered itself by becoming reliant on Google traffic, SEO, leads like that. And so instead of creating an outlet and a tone that attracted an audience, they were constantly, or they still are, constantly trying to tweak what they do in order to attract a faceless robotic algorithm, right? Everybody is so dependent on Google. Everybody is so dependent on YouTube that what was considered online media has gone out the window because anybody can have AI do an abstract review of a game now, I guess.
Yes,
but you still need somebody to crawl through 200 hours of Expedition 33 and write up a full walkthrough of that, which AI can then crawl through and steal and put in other sites. So yeah, so it was crazy. So when I started, print media was far and away the king. And I was at PlayStation very briefly in 96, 97. And they wanted to literally print media and games media and online media were being segregated, right? They'd have an event one day for like next gen PC gamer, ultra game players, Game Pro, official PlayStation magazine, all those guys. And then the next day they would have an event for the GameSpots and the IGNs, and they would give less information at the online event because they knew the online stuff was going to appear immediately.
Right.
Well, the print stuff was going to be 3 months in the future in the US.
Right.
So, immediately not immediately, but the print guys knew their days were numbered pretty quickly. And the smart ones started up really good websites to kind of back up, the time in between murdering acres and acres of trees and throwing that through the post.
So piggybacking on what you said, for me the biggest change was the domination of Google and writing for SEO. When I started, I was actually in more consumer tech and consumer electronics. So I started writing as a freelancer for PC Magazine and Computer Shopper. And then I think when we met, Kramer, I was at Happy Puppy. That was my first full-time online gig for gaming. And we were like a tertiary site when online was still not really respected and print was still king by far. But still at that point, you had multiple search engines. You still had Yahoo and Excite and whatever the hell Microsoft was at the time.
Yeah. Ask Jeeves,
Lycos. It's like, remember Lycos? But now it's pretty much like 90% Google, depending on what month it is. And SEO dominates so much that before I would genuinely try to make a well-crafted article that would inform and entertain. But it doesn't really pay to do that anymore. You have to abide by, it's Google's world. We're just writing in it. So you have to play by their rules and use all this stupid SEO rules that, I don't know. I think it's ruined writing in a way.
Yeah, for sure.
And I miss the quality of print writing that didn't have to play by those rules at all. So yeah. Now let's talk about that transition from print to online becoming the dominant source of video game news. Kramer, I wanted to get your perspective on this because you've been on both sides. You've been print, online, you've been in game publishing and in the media. So you've seen a lot. What was that transition like for you, and how did it change the coverage of gaming?
I think what it did was, we moved away from, for the most part, from smarter long form features and like really in-depth, interesting interviews to focus instead on immediacy versus accuracy, right? Didn't matter if the story was right as long as you were the first person to post it. It also, became an era of like hot takes. Like, this is what I think of this screenshot I saw today. If you look Future right now, they have a GTA 6 podcast that they've done dozens of episodes on. And like, how is that like? And when that trailer came out, like, there are people who were posted like 187 screenshots from the GTA 6 trailer. It's like, geez Louise. And we also, one of the things that, kind of bums me out, because my favorite part of media relations has been the relations side. Like, I've known both you guys. We've been in many cities together, countries in certain cases. We've done lots of fun games together. We've done lots of cool stuff. I think right now with what's happening is that, we've lost a lot of that kind of in-person relationship stuff. So, it's these days, it's a lot more email interviews versus in-person meetings or conversations.
Now, Ray, you went from EGM, and I believe you were at Machinima for a bit after that. Is that correct?
But not doing video games. I was doing Machinima at that time had been bought by Warner Brothers, and we would be turned into we basically got turned into the studio that made DC Daily, which was at the the DC Universe streaming services news program, which then obviously when it got folded into Max or HBO Now, and then HBO Max, and then Max, and now HBO Max. So I couldn't resist the joke. If you brought it up, I couldn't resist the joke.
Yes.
So my gaming career though started. I was actually doing sports games for ESPN.
Right, I remember.
That's where I started, and then I went to EGM, and then and then went over into comic books, and then got back into the game. Crossed over to game development, community management, stuff like that. So,
but I don't. And I don't mean this disrespectfully, but you were at EGM when it was kind of like the sinking ship of print journalism.
100%, not absolutely 100%. 100%.
So what was that experience like for you, and what did you think? Where did you think coverage was going from that point?
I mean, I realized pretty quickly into my EGM career that was the direction was going to go. That was the way. I was amazed we held on for 5 more years, right? I was amazed that we held on to 2015, right? Like, we really gave it our all. I thought that obviously we were hopefully going to invest more into videos, into podcasts, and to kind of try to catch up to where everybody else was. But the thing is that we were so far behind at that point.
I filmed you for a bunch of those when you were trying to do video. Yeah,
100%. Yeah, and then it opened up some great opportunities for me and all that, and had some really cool experiences. But at that point, we were so far behind everybody else that was much more established. We had a couple of hits. Like a couple of things that just randomly went viral. Like I Let It Die video from the Suda 51 game there from Gummo, and that randomly got like 500,000 views, and we were like, "Hey, we did it!" And then we were like, "Wait, we got to do it again? Ah, crap!
How'd we do that?"
Yeah, I still have no idea, Chris.
Yeah,
no idea. But it just was one of those things where we kind of knew and. Yeah, we got into the boat too late, unfortunately, for a lot of that stuff, and it's the way things have gone now in terms of if you're a big outlet and you're not already established, you don't even bother. I actually talked to Stephen Weintraub, who's the founder of Collider, a few weeks ago, and he talked. Me and a couple of friends, we were just sitting down, and somebody asked him, "Is like, could somebody start a Collider today?" And he's like, "Absolutely not." He's like, absolutely not. He's like, it'd be impossible because of the SEO, because of the optimization, because to try to start from the ground up, I mean, you'll have a lot of hobby sites still out there, but the odds of somebody coming along and being the next Collider or us at EGM catching up to the big dogs at that point in the mid 2010s, the mid 2010s, I don't know, like it was a lost cause.
So I wanted to talk about online a bit, and I wanted to frame it with the phrase that Kramer used, with online media killing itself, because that's, I think, the perfect way to put it. The thing that I noticed was the pay scale, especially for freelancers, just like slid. it cratered, which was, and to give an example, when I was writing for PC Magazine, I think the rate was $1.75 a word for 300 words. Computer Shopper was $1 a word for 900 word reviews. So sometimes if I was lazy, I would do 3 laptop reviews for Computer Shopper in 2 weeks, then take the rest of the month off. And now I see the rate for game freelance. It's like you get $25 to review a game. That's a lot of hours.
It's insane
to put in it. So is the problem with online? I mean, there was a transition from magazine style sites like Happy Puppy and GameSpy where I came from, and then blogs became the big thing. Kotaku was massive for a while, still is pretty big, and now there's a video focus. How has online changed in your experience, Kramer, and where do you see it going?
Yeah, I think the positive side for people who love video games is that as the technology improved and we became more reliant on video, it became easier for people to go, oh, I see what that game is now, right? Yeah. It's no longer like, here are 3 heavily doctored, touched up screenshots that are at like 370 by 240 resolution. It's like, here, postage stamp. Now everyone puts out, actual gameplay video, trailers that are show you what the game is. And there's no longer so much of a, like, hey, these 3 screenshots I saw in the back of GamePro, that were printed at thumbnail size. Like, I think that looks good. I don't know. So that, that's the benefit to all of us who like games. I think it also helped, in a lot of cases, give faces to people on the media side, right? So, Ray, you've been broadcasting your smile across the internet for a very long time. So it helps, I think, form more connections. So, there are a lot of awesome people out there who've been able to spin that out. Destin is doing it right now, just having gone out from IGN back in, December or January. You look at what Greg Miller and the boys at Kind of Funny have built up over the last couple of years. So there's a place for people to really be kind of unique and smart and kind of drive an audience and find an audience and connect more deeply than just being like, generic blue byline at the top of a GameSpot preview.
Right. I love that it's become more personality driven. Ray, I think you've had a lot of experience with that. I remember going to Comic-Con with you and the fans loved you, Ray.
I knew how to ham it up a little bit. I was amongst my people. I was amongst my people.
We were stopped. We were stopped often because people knew Ray. So.
a couple of spots. But yeah, no, it has been fascinating. I think everything's much more personality driven. I think what's even more fascinating, I think, is like obviously your Greg Millers and your Andrew Renee's, like these are your outliers that get these bigger followings and whatnot, right? Yeah. I feel like the rise of the micro influencer has actually been interesting, right? Where you have like you're finding, to your point, Chris, you find people finding their audience, but their audience isn't these millions of people. It's 5,000 followers on Twitch. It's 10,000 maybe on YouTube.
This is the guy who knows everything about JRPGs and like
very niche, very specific. Yeah. Right, exactly. When I need something about MLB The Show, this is the guy I go to. When I need something about like the DLC for Destiny, this is the guy I go to. Right. And so I think what's been interesting has been is that in a weird way, everybody, I remember being part of the review crew, everybody had their specialties and everybody had their topics and things that they wrote about. And now you're starting to see that now it's just on this macro scale where you have all of these specialists out there and they all have this little tiny audience, not tiny, but making gas money or whatever on YouTube or on TikTok or on Twitch, because people are coming to them for that one thing, right? Overwatch, Marvel Rivals. There's so many communities out there, and Discord has also helped that. You've had apps and other techs that support all this to really kind of drive home that that infrastructure and that community that a lot of these folks have always kind of, I think, wanted and stuff, and now they can kind of have and build themselves.
Well, that was something we learned when I was at Sony Online, when I was on the comms team with like Sean and Tamara, and then later Katie and Courtney and Michael and Ty and all those folks. We found that it was really hard for GameSpot, I'm picking on them again, to like get excited about, and I'm not kidding, the 9th expansion for EverQuest, right? GameSpot's just like, look, we don't, this game's been running for 8 years. We're not on top of this. So for us, for moments like that, we would bring in the fan sites, which is really like the guys' MMORPGs, and there were a ton of like MMO focus sites and EverQuest focus sites, and we were even bringing in like guild leaderships from EverQuest, because those guys had fantastic reach through their own guild sites and stuff like that. And we were like, oh my God, these guys, these are our media for EverQuest. And that was, the way you're figuring out the very early days of live service games. Like, oh, we have to reach the community directly. And that was something that we did by going to these, like you said, now micro influencers and making them a part of the process the same way that we were with PC Gamer or GamePro or Computer Gaming World or anything like that, because the MMORPG maybe didn't have as many zeros in their viewership numbers, but everybody who was going to MMORPG was definitely interested in what the latest update was for EverQuest.
High conversion rate, a lot of click-throughs on that.
100%.
I do have a point that I wanted to get your guys' opinions on, but first, it's time for a tangent. When Kramer was at Sony Online, he was responsible for the most popular video I did for Yahoo at the time, which was the Antonia modeling contest.
Oh man, yeah.
That was a great event, but also the lady that won that, she was a trip because I got to meet her a few times after that. My favorite was, I think we were at Digital Life in New York.
Yep.
And instead of going to LaGuardia, she asked the cab driver to take her to Guadalajara, which is still one of my favorite goofs of today. I mean, Ray, you're an East Coast guy.
Yes. Yeah.
So Guadalajara and LaGuardia, a little bit different geographically, and
sometimes there are people that you should not allow to be on their own. And that was a lesson we learned on that particular adventure. Yes.
She was sweet. She just needed help.
So for the record, I would like to point out the whole Quest for Antonia thing was not my idea. That idea was brought to me by 3 women who I worked with in the marketing department at Sony Online, and they were all on board. And I was like, I don't, this was 2004, 2005. And I'm like, I'm not comfortable with this. And they're like, no, this will be great. Everyone will love it. We had a partnership with Stuff Magazine, and like, oh boy. And it culminated in a bikini contest in Vegas at the Stuff Magazine Casino weekend. And I was just like, I don't like, this is, looking back at it now, I'm like, oh, that's probably the moment in my career that I will eventually get canceled for. So thanks for bringing that up, right? I think I have now self-detonated my career by being on the show.
I have a video. I think it's on like 480p or something. Yahoo still has the tapes, but there was that red-haired contestant that actually knew a lot about the game. I was rooting for her, but instead we got Guadalajara girl.
Yes. It turned out that the publisher of Stuff Magazine thought that she was the one who needed to win. So that's so.
Yes. What can you do? Yep. So getting back to that point about online, it was interesting to hear Kramer talking about that GTA 6 podcast. As content creators, as consumers, I get why you would want that one specialist to be like your go-to guy for sports or MMOs or something like that. But reading review crew, I always kind of like seeing, what the JRPG guy thought about Madden, just to get that different perspective. But as a content creator, does that does that kind of pigeonhole you? And does it get boring if you're talking 600 hours about a game that hasn't come out yet, and people are going to be relying on you about that game throughout its whole cycle? So, Ray, what do you think? What do you think about getting pigeonholed as a specialist? Is that
it's difficult, and especially going back to our earlier conversation about SEO, is that like especially like certain platforms like TikTok, once you become known as the guy or girl for that thing, like that's it. Like I obviously I do a lot of stuff with MLB The Show. I've taken a bit of a break lately, but like you know, and I built up a nice little following there. And I started to do Marvel Rivals content, and like it just tanked my numbers. And it's like I really like Marvel Rivals, and I really want like that game to succeed, and I really love playing it, and I play probably too much of it. But my audience is like, go back to baseball. Go back to baseball. Why aren't you streaming baseball? Where's your baseball? And TikTok does no favors, and they're not gonna change your pigeonhole. You're stuck. So yeah, it becomes difficult to grow to a certain point. It becomes boring. Like I mean. Look, I love baseball. Everybody knows nobody loves baseball more than I do. But I put, I think like 300 or 400 hours in MLB The Show last year, and that is too much for that game. Like, you know, like I mean, even after a while, I branched out a little bit into football and hockey. Hockey did okay for me, but people are always like, "When's baseball season start?" I'm like, "You know the date. It starts in March. You know when baseball season starts." Like, I can't do it 12 months out of the year, but the algorithm wants you to do it 12 months out of the year. And yeah, so it can definitely be difficult as especially as a micro influencer when you want to maybe do more stuff and show your range and show that you do have other passions within this wonderful kaleidoscope of genres that we have in the gaming industry. You know, like, I mean, if I could just imagine if I tried to stream Claire Obscure, what would happen? You know, like, so it can be frustrating and it can be exhausting. And that's why sometimes I'll take a break and people are like, where'd you go? I'm like, I need a break, man. Like, cause I need to play something else besides baseball.
So the audience that you've cultivated from MLB The Show, do you ever want to go to them and be like, guys, I am more? It's like I can play other games. Really,
they don't care.
Yeah, they don't care.
They want to talk about expected batting average on the left side of the infield on a 1-2 count. Like that's, I mean, God bless them. They're hardcore, and some days I love that stuff too. Like, but like other days it's like, man, can we talk about like Doom the Dark Ages a little bit? And it's hard. It is hard
to play baseball.
Yeah, it is hard to break out of that pigeonhole that I've found myself in, and I'm sure a lot of people feel similarly.
Yeah, I mean, we do more and more. When I say we, I mean kind of like people who do communications, PR, public relations, media relations, all that sort of stuff. We do more and more outreach these days to people on the YouTube, Twitch, TikTok side of things, because quite frankly, there are more of them, and they have, like a bigger reach in aggregate than most of the kind of game platforms are. And I've had the same conversation with many, many, many creators where I'm like, hey, look, I've got this game. It's not Minecraft, but it's similar. It's a building game. It's got fantasy elements. It's like this. It's very similar to what you're playing. You should check this out. And I've had, influencers come back to me, content creators come back to me and say, hey man, I'm sorry. If I do anything other than Minecraft on my channel, my numbers tank, my revenue dries up, and my audience leaves me. He's like, and then I stop getting like my Twitch affiliate status comes into play. I start losing sponsorship dollars, all this sort of stuff. And you look, and there are people who have been playing, things like Minecraft on Twitch for 15 years, right? There are people who are still playing. I'm like, wow, So I have over 650 hours into Binding of Isaac on my Steam Deck. But Binding of Isaac, that's like my fidget spinner. Like I can turn that on and I can just go on a run. And sometimes that run is like 5 minutes and sometimes that run is 40 minutes. But I don't have a camera on me and I'm not trying to talk that whole time. So, when you read about burnout on the content creators and how hard it is to break through, even it's like, hey, I got a game that I think you'll love. A lot of times the response is like, but my audience will not. So,
Right. So that's what I was going to ask you, Kramer. Like, you have specialists. So for certain products, you know exactly who to go to.
Mhm.
But say you have a product from a smaller publisher or a niche product. Is it more challenging to you, or is that when you go to like a general site, like a
Yeah.
Did or a GameSpot?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's really changed. So, in the olden times, I think it was easier to find people who might get excited about a game and champion a product. So I remember at one point I was I was having lunch with Ricardo Torres, who used to be EIC at GameSpot.
Yes.
And Ricardo was like, Kramer, I got to tell you something. He's like, our game of the year this year is going to be Demon Souls. And I was like, wait, what? That weird little Japanese import that Sony put out, like that impossible to play game. He goes, no, it's going to be our game of the year. He's like, it is the best crafted game that came out this year. I'm like, dude, there's like Call of Duties and whatever, Diablos and Tomb Raiders probably. I'm like, how can you put this weird little game as your game of the year? He's like, because it's the best game that was made this year. And I was like, Ricardo, you're going to get killed for this. And he's like, nope. And he was right. And now everybody's like, Elden Ring. I'm going to I'm going to run a podcast series about Elden Ring. But, like you could find someone like that. IGN famously, Tal went to a GameStop, and there was a Guitar Hero, like the first Guitar Hero, like the kind of crappy one that came out before Activision bought Red Octane. And Tal was a rock fan and a guitar player, and he picked it up and brought it to the office, and like they lost their minds, and IGN like championed Guitar Hero. It's almost impossible to do that now, because now when you talk to preview editors at like the bigger sites, they're like, well, let me look in the back end and I'll see what are, okay, look, these kind of games don't perform well, this, and it's going back to games media in a lot of ways have killed themselves, because they're so focused on like, we wrote this one story about Call of Duty and it got X number of clicks. So what did we do? We wrote 5 more stories about Call of Duty to try to, 5X those clicks. So they're just chasing the impossible, algorithm. And we've lost a lot of capabilities to kind of like bring things up. So fortunately, there are a ton of people on YouTube and Twitch and other places, Facebook Live, where people will go, hey, I cover indie games, or I cover all shooters, or, I'm into rhythm games. So where in the old days, it used to be like, if I would go to Computer Gaming World, I knew the 2 people who were in charge of RPGs. So
Right.
All right, we got an action RPG. I got to go this person. And like I talked to Jeff Green, and I'd be like, Jeff, I need this to go to, whoever these 2 people are. They're the people who is like, got it. They would have people who would specialize. This person does racing simulations. This person loves the baseballs, like Ray, But now media, there's so few staff on board, and they're so focused on following SEO that they don't have time to like get out there. Right. And so things are constantly, that's why you're seeing things like Schedule 1 or, Power World or, games like that are constantly catching media by surprise, because they've got to like be so tightly focused on what's getting returns from Google, what's driving traffic views, and what's getting, engagement on TikTok and thumbs up on YouTube, that a lot of stuff passes them by till it blows up on Steam or on Roblox. And then they're like, oh crap, we got to back our way into this and figure out now how we can get traffic. And that's usually by writing a, how to sell cocaine on Schedule 1.
So I love the drug point, because it's like online outlets are chasing the dragon, but for clicks and not drugs. We spoke about independent creators for a bit. what did you call them, Ray? Micro influencers? Like,
there's influencers, and then there's micro influencers who have,
Are there-
have a small.
like, are those influencers with micro penises? Like, is that-
That's not. I don't go to those
No.
websites.
No.
I'm not allowed to look at my search history to deny.
So there's so many great creators out there, and a lot of them are fantastic. But there's also, I don't know, I think there are more bad creators out there. Does that make it harder to find content? Like my algorithms suck for finding new content. Like I've been vacuum shopping, so I'm getting all these like Melee and SIBO videos now, which are actually quite useful, but I'm not getting any of the cool game stuff anymore. What do you think about the mix of the rise of independent creators and the mix of quality versus this guy just has a webcam kind of deal?
Well, I definitely think that there are more imitators than like legit. Like there's people who like, oh, I can do this, and they think it's easy, and then they try to chase, and they don't understand what goes into it, and they don't research, they don't have, I mean, obviously they don't have the like journalistic background, so they just kind of like they're chasing clickbait, and they're chasing things to just try and drive traffic and get numbers themselves to see if they can build an audience. And sometimes you have really good people out there. You have a lot of really good, cool content creators who really are passionate, and then there are some folks who just end up becoming like professional trolls, right? Like it's a crapshoot, right? And like the sad thing is that depending on the topic, sometimes the troll wins the traffic.
Yeah.
Right. Like
sure.
It's incredibly frustrating. And you wish you could just tell people like, no, don't watch them. If you don't watch them, they'll go away. But
to be fair, that's not just a video game problem. That's a media
problem in general.
Pandemic,
100%.
social media, everything. Negativity drives engagement. That's
100%.
That's the root. Like everything that people complain about with TikTok or YouTube, it's just how it is across the board. Yeah. Somebody is like yelling or pissed off or mad about something, that you're going to get, 4x the amount of engagement on that than someone like, I like vanilla ice cream, so. And we won't justify anybody by naming trolls, but I think there are more than a few examples of people who just like scream into the mic about nonsense. Yeah. And like you look and it's like, Jesus, there 500,000 people have watched this insanity.
Right.
Like some unwashed weirdo in his dirty apartment, just like yelling nonsense. And it's hard because it does become a cult of personality. Like, so that's the good and the bad. We were saying earlier, the online media have really kind of been allowed to come forward and be recognized, but there's also there are just a lot of bad actors.
They couldn't get any gigs in LA, so they decided to yell about games instead.
And they start off yelling about a game, and then maybe they're like, the Nazis had some good ideas. It's a weird jump. It's like, how did this happen?
Right. And then all of a sudden they're sponsored by Russia, and then that's a whole other thing. One of the things I've noticed about the independent creators, I will use the word influencers, fine, is that some of them are totally on board with having journalistic integrity. Others do not give a crap at all. Like when I came up at Ziv Davis, there was always a clear line between publishing and editorial. Mm-hmm. One of the big influences in my career, John Kiefer, who was my boss at GameSpy, he's an old newspaper guy. So editorial integrity was a major thing for him. And for the most part, I was a well-behaved boy when I was writing. I'm not going to say there weren't some gray areas, because there certainly was. But it just seems like a lot of creators don't care about editorial integrity. They will take the sponsorship. They will let whatever sponsor they have that week influence what they're saying. What does that do for the information people are getting, Ray? Does that worsen the pool, or?
Absolutely. I think there's a lot of folks out there who act on misinformation, but I think the problem is that it's not even that they don't care about ethics. A lot of them don't even understand ethics. They don't have that background. It's never been taught to them. They're like, this is what I do. I'm going to yell on the internet, and then people are going to give me free stuff, And if they give me free stuff to say something that they want me to say, I'm going to do it because I want free stuff, right? They're not doing it because they come from altruistic thing to be like, I want to, entertain and educate and inform people. It's I think it starts with their motivations, and then it just kind of snowballs from there. So I don't think that they necessarily either care about ethics at all. It never even equates into it never pops into their mind. So if they even know what journalistic ethics are, right?
Right. Maybe they just saw they want to be like the video game Kardashians. They saw that side.
Reality TV, reality video games. It's gonna happen, right? Like you get enough VR headsets. I don't know, but I think it's and I think again, and then because if people who are yelling at the top of their lungs and they get all the attention, but if they're spouting misinformation, but people who are uneducated in media consumption and uneducated to be like, I should go look at a different source. I should check this guy's sources, right? People are like, what's a source? They don't think about that. They just take the one thing that appeals to them, that makes them feel good. And again, and it's not just video game media. It's really a lot of all the media out there right now. And they run with it. And again, it just kind of snowballs into this flaming forest fire of misinformation, right?
Right. So Kramer, I kind of wanted to get two answers from you out of this. One is as a content consumer, because you're still a gamer, you still enjoy this stuff, but
I don't like the term gamer. It's,
it's kind of passé now, isn't it?
I enjoy video games.
Yeah.
You don't say video games.
I'm not a movie watcher. Like everyone watches movies, but the other perspective, like for independent creators that may not have the best ethics, do you ever take advantage of finding like useful idiots that will make your mission or your client happy?
I hope not. That's not kind of how I operate.
That's good.
Ethics.
Yeah, exactly. I gotta live with myself at the end of the workday. What I do find funny is that they're still out there and kind of like the hoi polloi from people who definitely are gamers. You still see that like, oh, the media are just being paid off. IGN and GameSpot, they're just being paid off. You see, like we've been seeing that for years, but and it's now especially funny because they're like, I don't trust, traditional games media. They're all being paid off. I only watch this influencer now, or this person on Twitch, or this person on YouTube. And every single one of those people is putting hashtag advertising content regularly. It's like, hey, there seems to be a flaw in your argument here, because this dude's even telling you, I'm going to play this game for the next 2 hours. And usually when a content creator is like posting their schedule, and by law, federal law, they have to put hashtag advertising or hashtag sponsored in there. So they have to let you know that they're being paid to do that, but they will put that on their schedule. And you will see in many cases, like their numbers are up here when they're playing Call of Duty. And then all of a sudden there's sponsored content that go down here and goes like this for 2 hours, and then comes back up when that 2 hour paid window is done and he goes back to streaming Call of Duty. And I have seen that when we've done sponsored content with various creators, where you can see in the chat, they'll be like, oh, so-and-so is, we got to watch this so that he can keep going. He's just got to keep money in the bank so he can continue to everyone just stay in, and he'll get back to Marvel Rivals or whatever eventually. We got to gut it out for the next hour while he's playing this game. So it is tough, because a lot of those like immediate snipes about people getting paid off. It's like, hey, and sometimes the sponsored content is hard to pick out from just regular content too. So
yeah, that's very true.
Really blurry too. And I will tell you, from a publishing perspective, it's become harder and harder over the years to work with content creators who don't just immediately, go, hand out, here's how much it costs.
I hate that so much.
But, honestly, so my son, who is 23, he doesn't go to video game websites. He watches guys. He's
Right.
He's super into competitive Call of Duty, right?
Ah.
All the guys he watches are like the esports bros that he loves on the teams that he likes, or guys who are super into the Call of Duty competitive scene who are telling him about like, hey, here's what's happening with Black Ops, and here's the new thing that's coming into Black Ops, and here's these new tournaments and esports World Cup and blah blah blah, all that sort of stuff. He doesn't go to GameInformer.com. He doesn't go to IGN.com.
Right.
He's
on
Twitch.
Let's hold on to that thought, because that is actually relevant to the next point. But I'm having so much fun with you guys that I forgot to beg for money. So guys, if you like the site, if you like what we're doing here at RPadTV, please consider picking up some RPadTV gimmicks. We got t-shirts, bags, phone cases, throw pillows, and more. You can find these products on Amazon.com. Just search for RPadTV, or if you want direct links, they're in the video description, or you can go to rpad.tv/merch. We also have a promo for Proton VPN. This is a fantastic VPN service that I use personally. Like way before I even started working with these guys, I was a paid Proton VPN user. And this graphic is actually a little outdated. There, you can actually get up to 70% off right now by using the link getproton.me/sh10j. There's also a direct link in the Facebook and YouTube descriptions. So Kramer, getting to that point,
Hashtag advertising.
that I was interested to hear how your son absorbs content. And it made me wonder, like when we were coming up, like the outlet was the most important thing. Like EGM was powerful, Game Informer was powerful, but now it almost seems like individual creators in some cases that's where it is. If you can get, although that is kind of rarefied air. So from your guys' perspective, is the outlet or the creator more important? Kramer, kick this off, please.
Yeah, I think there are still a few outlets out there that have, a long enough history and a big enough name that people still look at them regularly. There's IGN, GameSpot, Game Informer coming back from the dead. Others, PC Gamer, of course, is huge. So there are a lot of sites that do have good traffic and good base, but I think more and more, if your audience is 30 or under, they're not going to a .com, right? They're looking at TikToks, they're looking at YouTube, they're following people on Twitch. So it's tough. I think from like a communications perspective, the emphasis has been more and more moving kind of what has been traditional media relations communications approach towards working with people on the content side as well.
Ray, what do you have to say about that? Because you were at The Brand for a while, and now...
Well, we weren't The Brand when I was there. No, no. I mean, I think that's. I think Chris hit the nail on the head. I think there are some outlets that are still. It's still important to have them, covering your game and your product and like flying that flag for you a little bit. But yeah, depending on what you're trying to do, and and there are some influencers who are just as valuable in some regards, depending on the game, depending on the audience that you're trying to target. So I really think it is almost like a case-by-case scenario. I think, honestly, if you try to get all of it, right? Like in a perfect world, you're going to get IGN and Greg Miller and all your biggest influencers and everybody else on board to cover your game. And obviously at that point, you're always trying to cover the biggest net possible, throw the biggest net possible. But yeah, I don't think you can say one is more important than the other. I do hope that the fact that Game Informer is coming back will help to start to even that out a little bit, because we mentioned it earlier. I think there's something like, somebody counted and said there's less than like 40 full-time game journalists left in the industry. Everybody else is just either a freelancer, they're guides writers, like but like full-time making a living as a games journalist. Yeah. It's like I think it's like 40 or under or something. Somebody actually counted them, because it's
we touched on this really briefly a minute ago, and I wanted to go back to it, but we were talking about what folks are getting paid now to write about games, it's astonishing. You can turn up things on Blue Sky where people will literally post like, hey, I have an outlet who just sent me their rates. And it's like a news story needs to be 250 words and they pay $10.
Yeah.
Yep. I know exactly what site that is, by the way.
Yeah. And like a game review is $25. And it's like, okay, you're going to review a game like Clear Obscure or Diablo 4 or, you know, any of these games where it's like, you know, maybe you don't have to put in all 200 hours to review a game like that, but you're sinking in 20, 30 hours.
Yeah, for sure.
And then
like, wow,
piece and rewriting that piece for $25. Like, what?
Yeah.
Like, how is that possible? Like, I honestly, we used to have, you know, we jokingly called it the fabulous freelancer crew. We had like a busload of guys who made their living like freelancing games for multiple sites and magazines.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't see that as possible now. Like, it's just like the rates they're insulting, honestly.
Yeah. They're definitely not livable. Whereas back then,
going back to the like the media getting paid off, I'm pretty sure that I could come up with $50 for someone to write a good review of a game I'm working on and double their money from, you know, whatever site they're writing that review for. Like, people are clearly not getting paid off.
Yeah.
They're getting paid off in like 2 beers and a side of French fries. Like, that's not like, haha, I'll get my Ferrari now.
I'll send you a dozen eggs.
Well, let's not go
That's
crazy.
the currency. Yeah.
Thousands of dollars at this point.
Yeah, I just don't get. We knew some guys back in the day that were doing well just freelancing for multiple outlets. You know, if we talk about that guy with the motorcycle boots that never had a motorcycle, he was making quite a living for himself.
Yeah, fantastic writer.
Yeah. And my favorite was when he sent me a Halloween article on November 3rd. I was like, dude, what the fuck?
Timely.
Yeah. It's like November is not scary, dude. So we talked about TikTok a bit, and I don't know the answer to this question. I understand that is massively popular, but can a platform like that, where it's primarily really short videos, can you do any quality journalism on a platform like TikTok or on what is it called on Facebook? The stories or what? I don't know what these things are called. Well, like Ray, what do you think of this?
I think TikTok in particular, you can. I think that especially because they've extended it almost to like where you can make your video almost as long as you want. I mean, I definitely, again, the algorithm starts to hurt you if he goes past like 3 minutes. Right. I still think you can do and tell a decent singular story in 3 minutes, right? I think you can have a beginning, middle, and end and be like, Grand Theft Auto released the trailer. Here's some highlights. It's coming out this date. It's obviously from right. You can do your whole spiel. I think you can. I just think that.
I think you can if you script it, if you plot it out. But a lot of these guys don't.
They don't, and I don't know if the audience, I don't think that's what the audience wants necessarily, right? And again, it comes back to they got to feed the algorithm, and I don't know if straight news like we used to write, even if you're reporting it to camera, maybe if you do it in a really fun, wacky way or something, a lot of sound effects and a special filter and music and all the right stuff, I think you can tell a quality story in 3 minutes. But I just don't know if anybody really wants to put that effort in. Right.
That is an interesting point. I mean, I see a lot of people being successful with like cute sound effects and, you know, wacky noises. I can even do things like, you know, today I'm feeling kind of.
Well done. Well done, Ray.
That's all I got. That's all. I'm not made for.
We'll work on your drop sport later.
So, Kramer, what do you think from a PR marketing perspective? How useful is TikTok to you, but how useful is it to an audience?
Yeah, I think Well, I think you asked, can quality journalism be done?
Yes.
And I have two thoughts on that. Has video games media ever really been journalism?
I
One
would
time,
say Dean Takahashi. Yeah.
excellent.
Yeah.
Yes. All right. You just completely popped that into my balloon. But yeah,
No, you're right though. There's not a lot. There's
Dean,
more.
100% is the definition of journalism in games media. He's like the benchmark.
He's my childhood hero.
Yeah. No, Dean's fantastic. Quality, I think, really is in the eye of the beholder. And right now, hundreds of millions of people are saying that's what they want. That's how they're engaging with things. So is it a 5,000 word deep dive into the history of Sonic's sneakers? No. But that's why we have all these like Substacks and newsletters and kind of really raise micro influencers, where people can find that sort of stuff too. I think TikTok is really good for during the pandemic. My daughter was not a gamer, had not really been interested in games, but TikTok was showing her the MiHoYo game. Why did I just blank on the MiHoYo game? Good Lord. Holy smokes, total senior moment. But her TikTok was just getting overrun with clips from their game. And she was
One of the Impact games.
Yeah, Genshin. Thank you.
Okay.
Good Lord. I think I've been talking too long. But yeah, so she was getting like her TikTok feed was just overrun with like Genshin clips. Like a lot of her favorite like anime TikTok producers were doing clips, and she came to me and she's like, "Hey, can I play this? Can we put this on the gaming PC? I'd like to." And my daughter, like overnight, started playing games because like she saw a lot of her favorite anime TikTok were all into Genshin. And so she picked up Genshin and played it. Like that was her sourdough bread during COVID. that was her thing during COVID. So, and she went from not playing games at all to being like 2 weeks later, she's like, "Dad, MiHoYo really needs to listen to the community because they've nerfed this character's ult." And it's like, and I was like, what is happening right now? So,
that's super cool. I love that.
So yeah, it was. And like we said, if you're under 30, like that's where
that's what they want. Whereas I would absolutely read the 5,000 word article about Sonic Sneaker. Yeah. I would gladly read that right now. I wanted to talk about a broader point about journalism in general, where it especially in America, it almost has a negative connotation. Like if someone asked me what I used to do, and I wouldn't say I was a game journalist. I'm like, I was a drug dealer. I don't know. It seems more honorable somehow these days. But how is that trend of, journalists not being trusted, or journalists sometimes not even being a respected profession? How is that trend in mainstream affected the gaming coverage and the gaming journalism world? Kramer, kick this one off.
I mean, we kind of talked about how there's a lot of folks in the online communities who are pretty dismissive of games media. I think you see that across the board in just about anything. That's what, why we are where we are in America in 2025. So that, I think traditional games media does catch a lot of flack, and, there's a lot of garbage out there, like just the dregs of like 4chan or the Kotaku and Action Gamergate Refugees and other kind of less savory outlets and creators that pop up from time to time. So I think it's very easy to like pick on that target and throw that dart at the balloon. And it's like you said, I think it's just journalism broadly and not just relegated entirely to games.
Ray, anything?
Yeah, I think 100%. I think it's anything in the journalism spectrum. I don't think it doesn't matter what you're covering at this point. It's just there seems to be a negative connotation as like we get ready to wrap up and I get ready to return my 7-bedroom, 6-bathroom that I got from games journalism, right? Because
Right.
yeah, we all got paid off back in the day.
Hell yeah, Ferraris for everyone.
Yeah.
But what is the solution if people aren't trusting the traditional outlets? They're saying certain influencers are paid. So do you just trust each other? I mean, do you trust other people in forums or in? Where do you get the good information then?
I think you have to really want to find it. I think you have to. I think I think things are gonna get worse still before they get better again. But I do think. I know. I don't. You don't think it can get worse, but it can. But I do think that the pendulum will start to swing back one day. Hopefully, I like to have that shred, that drop of optimism. But I do think that it's just going to get. Yeah, I think it's just going to get a little bit worse before it starts to get better, to where finally people kind of get sick of the negativity and the flame wars and the BS and some of these negative actors and start to hopefully want to look for your Dean Takahashis and whatnot again and find good quality writing, not just about the games, but also about just the news in general, and want to really know what's happening. So,
yeah, I mean, the good and the bad of the way things have been for the last decade or so is that everything is fractured, right? So it's not just something.com. It's also YouTube, it's Facebook Live, it's TikTok, it is Substack newsletters, it is Reddit communities and like tiny little subreddits. It is Discords. Like we haven't even talked about like the Discord communities, but it's insane. And I don't even know how you navigate that because, to me, Discord is almost like when people talk about the dark web. I'm like, I don't know how to get the dark web. I don't think I could buy meth on the dark web if I needed to. Like, I don't even know how to get there or find out. Like, but people are like, yeah, like I'm on this Discord community. There's 150,000 people there, and we all talk about like pottery, and it's all, so there's a place for everything. But that means that everything is everywhere. So it's hard to kind of bring it back. So it really, I think, I think the solve is going to be human curation versus like AI, because people are like, oh, don't worry, AI will be able to read every video game article ever and go, these are the video game articles you should read. It's going to be like, hey, Ray, what sites are you looking at these days? Like, I can't find you. Are you like, I'm constantly asking people, I'm like, are you subscribed to any interesting newsletters? I'm like, here's one I really like, and stuff like that. And kind of going down.
Right. So that's actually how I discover cool Discords. I follow my friends basically. And if I join a community they're in, and if I like it, I stick around. If I don't, maybe that one's not for me. We have a comment from Johan who says, I don't trust influencers at all. I still prefer articles and reviews from legitimate sources. I think that it's also a function of age. Johan's in our age range. So I wonder if the younger people have no problem with the, like the short TikTok stuff. Yeah. Damn, I had a cool tangent, but I forgot it. Oh, that's so unfortunate. So I want to bring up the M word that is unfortunately prevalent in the video game business. It's Metacritic, which is a useful tool for users that like to see how a game is tracking, get in like an overall aggregate score. But also some publishers have used it to calculate developer bonuses. Some have used it to plot out future game roadmaps. Mm-hmm. And at one point, I don't know if that's the case now, but I thought Metacritic was overly powerful.
Yes.
And had way too much influence.
Absolutely true.
Kramer, take it away. It seems like you have thoughts.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. No, I'm just agreeing with you. But yeah, there was a point in the early 2000s where video game publishers particularly became overly obsessed with Metacritic. Perfect example. A buddy of mine was working at a very large video game company, and the very voluble CEO of that video game company came steaming out of his desk and out of his office right across from my buddy's desk and like slams down a copy of a magazine. And he's like, look at this review. My buddy was like, yeah, it's a 93. And the CEO goes, this was a 96 game. And it was like, what? So And you're right. There was a point in the early 2000s where developer bonuses were 100% tied to Metacritic scores. People were also doing analyses of development studios, and they're saying, well, we've looked at all of your games, and the baseline for reviews in your games fall into the 72% category. And, sorry, we're only hiring developers who their Metacritic baseline is 80% or higher.
Wow.
And stuff like it's just nonsense, right? But I think we've broken away from that. I think everyone's gone away from Metacritic a little bit. There are so many avenues now to look at things. You're following your favorite content creator, or you're going to PC Gamer. You're no longer as deeply tied. And there's been enough stuff over the years where we've all learned how actually busted the system is on Metacritic. So there are sites on Metacritic that are secretly weighted, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you're a larger site, your review score is secretly weighted to have more impact than someone on a smaller site. And also the way they handle the argument over the years of 3 stars does not mean a B-. 3 stars means this is a really good game. 4 stars is an A, and 5 stars is an A+. They don't rate it like that. Like for them, 3 stars, that's like 70% or 60%. So it's all busted and it's all dumb, and it was always dumb.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm glad that kind of the chokehold that nonsense has eased back. Hollywood, though, man, Rotten Tomatoes, still owns Hollywood probably harder than Metacritic ever did in the games industry.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There was a point at GameSpy where I really tried to get rid of scores in general because I always thought they were stupid. Like, guys, it's not the Olympics. Like, I wanted to have 3 things: like buy it, rent it, like fuck it. And I think that's all that matters. Like, will you buy this game?
Aaron Loeb started Daily Radar, and that was his first big thing for Daily Radar. Was like, no percentages, no stars. It was 4 scores. It was, this is the best thing ever. This is really good. This is pretty good. And this sucks. Because Aaron looked at it as like our job at Daily Radar was to help players, regardless of age, figure out where to spend $60 to $70. Like if you are, if you're in your 20s, you're not able to buy every game that comes out. So we felt it was our job to go, hey, you know what? If you got $70 this week, this is the game you should look at. You might want to think about, borrowing this from a friend or like you said, renting it, which shows our age. Or like stay away from this hot garbage fire altogether. So yeah, it was like, so there were no stars or anything. It literally was like from this to this.
Ray, any thoughts on Metacritic, on how it has influenced the coverage of games?
Yeah, no, I think you guys hit it on the head, all the major points. I think what did also help was competition, like OpenCritic coming along, right? Metacritic had the monopoly for so long on being the collector of all the scores on the internet. And I think that obviously every time competition comes along, that helps, which, to my knowledge, OpenCritic is not weighed or far less weighed than Metacritic is. So in that, I think kind of helped Metacritic kind of pull back. And I think also the point that it was, I think people realized that there was just way too much riding on this arbitrary score that, and you see this too. You could have two critics say the exact same thing about a game, but one gives it a 6 and one gives it a 7, and that could make that 1 point could make or break a lot of folks. And I think it's a good thing that we've gotten away from it. I think it's a nice feather in your cap, right? If you can get a good Metacritic, but it's like anything else, but it's such I think it's an afterthought at this point in a lot of places.
So I have a few takeaways just from learning from you guys, which has been fantastic. There are very few full-time video game journalists right now. The pay scale for freelancers is not worth it at all.
Atrocious.
And the kids love the short form video stuff, which is not my wheelhouse because I'm old now. And Ray, to quote one of your old friends, I'll get you out of here on this. Do you think game journalism is better now than when your career started. I will say there's a lot more great stuff to choose from, but it's also harder to find the good stuff. So I'm curious to hear your guys' answer. Ray, close it out.
Yeah, no, I do not think games journalism is better as a whole, right? It is good that we have more voices. It is good that more people are being able to have themselves heard, but I think that it's also, you have sometimes people who probably shouldn't be heard being out there now too. So it's a double-edged sword, right? And I think that also, to your point, it's hard to find good quality journalism now that nobody can make a living in it, so I would say overall I hate to say it, but games journalism is worse.
Kramer.
Yeah, it's tough because we talked about how things have fractured and it's all over the place. I'm finding a lot of really interesting stuff out there that's so like this guy, Ryan Rigney, he writes a newsletter called Push to Talk. Fantastic. You can subscribe to that. I believe it's a Substack.
I'll check it out.
Or one of the many other similar ones. There's a crew of really talented writers out of the UK. They just started a newsletter called Bathysphere. And they do like really interesting pieces on the intersection of games and art, sometimes little over my head, but I like to read it because I can pretend I'm smart. And so there are things to find, and even so Simon Carlos writes the newsletter for Game Discover Co. And every week Simon Carlos blows my mind with data that they pull or information that they get from indie game developers and things like that. So there's stuff out there. But I think it's harder to find the quality things. What I do like about PC Gamer is I think PC Gamer is big enough that they have room to kind of celebrate some of the weirdness. So there are some they publish some really interesting, fun, bizarro articles on PC Gamer that are not just 10 things you missed in this Marvel movie, So I think it's there. It's harder to find, but also I'm a super huge music nerd, and all the music I'm into is really weird and on the outskirts of everything. So I spend a lot of time searching for the music I like. I'm not I'm hey, Chapel Roan, that's great. I'm glad people have that, but I'm going to fly to Minneapolis and go see the Hold Steady play for 3 days. Stuff like that.
Nice.
So, there is a lot of stuff out there. It's just hard to find it and kind of bring it all in.
See, I like Simon. I've written for him. I've admired his work for a long time. Had no idea he had a current newsletter. So discovery is an issue here. And that could be totally on me. I don't know how to discover things anymore.
There's just a lot out there. And so you need people to tell you to go look at this thing.
So guys, if you have any newsletters, websites, creators that you recommend, please leave a comment in the comments section. Follow Ray. He's Ray Carsillo in pretty much every social media platform. Follow Kramer on Chris Kramer PR on Blue Sky. There are direct links to both their accounts in the Facebook and YouTube descriptions. Hope you can join us on Thursday, where Mac, Paul Semmel, and I will be playing a game where we recast Revenge of the Sith using current actors.
Nice.
It should be fun. I will give you a hint right now. I'm going for a Revenge of the Sith musical, so all my picks can sing. It's going to be awesome. Thanks for watching RPadTV. See you next time.
Raymond, that's you.